Convo Fango. Today we are joined by director Adam Robitel, director of the upcoming Escape Room Tournament of Champions.
Dun dun dun. Yay.
Yay! All right. Thank you for coming to hang out with us today.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit. See, I always like to have you tell me about it so I don't risk like saying something spoilery. So tell us about Escape Room Tournament of Champions.
Well, look, I always say for a sequel to exist, you have to really push the boundaries of what the first movie did. And what I love is that we saw Zoe in the first movie, this mousy, sort of anxiety laden gal who could barely leave her dorm room. And by the end of the movie, she's literally transformed into this like Lois Lane, like I am just vengeance on her mind. And there's this great sort of transformation at the end of the movie one. And she's obsessed with taking Minos down. And she has this little bit of a clue that she found it's very arcane in the logo itself. She's broken it down into a math problem basically and realized that they're coordinates. So she thinks she's onto something. And Logan, who plays Ben, he's really just feels really like he owes her. She saved his life, and I think he probably secretly, or not so secretly, has a crush on her. Why wouldn't he? And she's got the brains, the beauty. She's this really interesting gal. And so yeah, they he gets roped in, and she wants to go to New York and see what she sees. And we thought, again, because it's a sequel, let's expand the mythology. So what I love is that while that game was happening in movie one in Chicago, there were games happening all over the world. And what we're going to realize is that Minos sometimes lets them go and lets them go out into the world. And I like the idea that just the escape rooms are just a small part of the suite of entertainment that Minos has at its disposal. Some of it might be punking somebody in their real life. Some of it might be, making somebody seem crazy and sending them to a sanitarium. They not only are they shifting global markets and maybe causing plagues, but the escape room games are just a small part of their portfolio, so to speak. And what we thought would be really cool is we're going to meet other survivors, because what we didn't want to do is, like in the first movie, educate the audience into what an escape room was. And we knew we couldn't have a bunch of players who were like, this is just a game. We didn't want the audience to be ahead of the players. So we thought, okay, let's say, what if there are other survivors, and they all get roped into a game that is heightened stakes and sort of the championship round. And so that's kind of the evolution of that. And then I knew I wanted to just look. I think for a little genre movie, we really had some great set pieces in the first movie. So I said, I want to try to outdo ourselves. And so I thought, well, how cool would it be to take something that everybody's maybe been on a train before, and then what if like Minos could derail a train car, because it just sort of speaks to their massive operations that are beneath the surface of reality. And so that sort of was like the beginnings of the thinking, and then it sort of evolved from there.
It's awesome. This is like such like a true sequel, which I love. Like it picks up where we left off in the first one. We have some returning characters, and then it's just bigger, badder, like everything about it is just like amplified. So like you said, you guys set out to like, let's see if we can outdo it. Absolutely did, because there's like very early on I was like, whoa, like what the fuck? And then it's terrifying, because it's like as you're talking about, like the escape rooms are like a small piece of what these people do. And as you're like early on, like you have this like shocking kind of like, fuck, like exactly how powerful are these people? And that's terrifying, because then that opens us all up to this, right? Like we're all kind of pawns in this game, and maybe we don't even know it.
Yeah, and I think, look, the nature of our country right now, and there's a lot of paranoia, and it's in the zeitgeist, right? I feel like a lot of us feel like we don't have agency over our own lives, and then something like COVID hits, and suddenly everything you thought was normal is disrupted. And so the idea of like this omnipresent, we always saw Minos as sort of like a god, and an amorphous, all-powerful deity. And so, and that was the hard part with like, what do you do for third act? And I think what we do in the sequel is really exciting without giving spoilers away. I think the fans of the first movie will really like the surprise that we sort of is waiting for them. But it speaks to a bigger thing, which is like we're all pawns in their game, and what I love is like, because I'm such a fan of like the Saw movies and of dark rated R horror. But when I came on to Escape Room, like the mandate was to make it PG-13, but also make it try to make it beautiful, frankly. And so we really tried to make each of the spaces just like powerful visual images. And so whether it's a New York City subway that was recreated entirely in Cape Town, South Africa, or a massive Art Deco bank that turns into a grid of lasers. I mean, the other thing I was saying earlier is like, in the first movie, we do fire, we do gravity, we do gas, we do coal. Like we did all the things that can kill people, right? So like literally developing this one, I was like, I don't know. Did you guys hear about that great molasses flood that killed 80 people? They died from sugar. Like, coming up with visual ways to kill people is difficult when you can't just rely on like a reverse bear trap on somebody's head. You know what I mean? So so that was tough, and so it was a lot of the time in the scripting phase was just coming up with the rooms, like trying to figure out like what, and I was saying earlier, I feel like the billiard room is still the best room, just because it was tied to Zoe's backstory and it worked like a Swiss Army knife. So it was like that was always the gold standard. And but we get a bank filled with really cool lasers, and you have a beautiful sun-drenched beach that then is trying to swallow people whole, and so yeah, it was definitely challenging. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's and I love that it's a Zoe story. I always gravitate towards strong female characters. I think that the ladies in this movie go the distance. All the dudes, dudes run into some problems, and so
they need some assistance.
They need some assistance, yeah. But I'm just proud of that, because I think that's really fun, and Zoe's just such a great character, because we always said that whoever's behind Minos has a sort of a Hannibal Lecter kind of fascination with Zoe. Her raw vulnerability, but also her strength. And I think whoever the mastermind is has decided to take her as a pet, let's say.
Yeah. She really is such a cool character. Like, I love her so much. I loved her in the first one, and then watching her development through the first one, and then watching her even like further develop here. Like, she very much like does not take shit, and she's so smart. Like, and I love it.
Yeah, the transformation is pretty amazing, and then there's a flashback to the first movie and this movie, and the transformation between her now and then is pretty powerful. And at the end of the day, you want somebody you have rooting interest in. And look, at the end of the day, these movies are about crazy ways of killing people, right? And so you want a lead character who you can really get behind. And I think her relationship with Ben is really endearing, and Logan is such a he brought his all to this, and I've put him as a human being through such a ringer, whether it's crushing him in a room or drowning him, or just throwing him into sand pits. Like, so I think he probably has a voodoo doll of me. But his relationship with Zoe is great, because he sees in her, she saved his life. He also knows that maybe she's, again, blinded by the sun. She just has vengeance on her mind, and he knows that she's going to get herself into some hot water, but he can't help but want to go with her because he feels he owes it to her. So I love that about their relationship.
Yeah, which is also very believable and very relatable, because like she is such a likable character and such a strong character, but also like has this sweet vulnerability to her. Like, who's gonna say no? She's like, I'm gonna go track these fuckers down, and I'm going like, you're gonna be like, okay, good luck with that, girl? Like, no, you're probably gonna go and help her out,
Yeah. And look, I think maybe he's a little, selfishly hoping, maybe he'll get a kiss or two, maybe.
I mean that too,
but yeah, but he's not a total patron saint, but yeah, and and at the end of the day, I think we we really tried to make the movie feel bigger, you know, than the first movie. And it's a really a theatrical experience. I was just listening. So you guys probably saw early screenings without the sound mix and the music and the new music and stuff. And with the DI, and it really, like, even things like the lasers, like, because I haven't seen any good lasers in movies. They're really hard to do. In fact, one of the best references I had was an old James Bond movie where they actually painted it onto the optical of the film. But with the DI and with the color, like, the lasers look really cool. And so yeah, I'm really proud of and it's just, once the movie starts and once you get into the game, it's like, it's just, it doesn't stop, and so it's like, I hope people don't leave, like, with anxiety, or maybe they will, but
I'm not really, you want them to not leave with anxiety. I feel like you'd be like, yeah, you leave that anxiety ridden, just like
well, the real question is, like, we've all been locked in our rooms. Is an escape room movie like the thing people want to say? Like, it's like, I don't know, too soon, maybe,
Dude, I don't know what your lockdown was like, but this has a lot more adventure than my apartment walls offered me during.
Yeah. We did some shooting during the pandemic too. It was fascinating, and it felt pretty safe on set and stuff, but it was definitely, it's a brave new world now.
So of the two movies, can I ask you, what's your favorite room? Do you have a favorite?
I think probably the billiard room is still my
Okay.
favorite. Just and also just anecdotally, like, how hard it was to pull off and how it seemed insurmountable, like when we were in prep on it. And things like the shot where we come around and then the ball falls up into Deborah's hand, and like, we had a crane that wasn't working, and like, it was 3 hours later and we dusted off an old crane that had no business being on a movie set, and it worked. And so I think that's still my favorite, but I'm really, this movie has some great moments in it. And so I'm really, the train is pretty damn cool, to see that in my mind and then somehow render it. And we had to do a lot of tricks because we didn't have a huge budget, and so, like, we built one little section of a train station, and then we had to have the kids run through 4 different versions of that with new set dressing, new actors, to make it feel like it was like an actual train station. So things like that the audience will never see, that we had to figure out how to do, I feel like I really learned a lot as a filmmaker in terms of that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of set extensions, and, there's a lot of visual effects in the movie. Having come from, like, doing an Insidious movie, that most of that is going to be in camera. Occasionally you'll have one little visual effect, but it's mostly just actors doing really cool stuff. Here it was, like, really logistically challenging. Every time Taylor's up on the top of the lighthouse, she's in a different stage than when we're in the main stage, and stuff like that you just we the sand itself, I mean, the whole beach smelled like a giant crab. It was like, you had sand everywhere. And then the South Africans had figured out a way to aerate. Basically, there was these big pits in the sand and in the beach, and they would aerate the sand, and then the characters would start to sink. But it took like 30 seconds just to get it to the right level where they would start to sink, and then it's kicking up all the sand into the lens of the camera, and we have to have them on safety lines, and so it was really, really challenging. So each room seemed like, and then you're dealing with water in a tank, and Logan can't hear me because I'm, there's just no way. There's mega tonnage of water coming down, and it's cold, and he hates me, and so it was really, really challenging. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So there were certain parts of it where I'm like, this had to be so hard to film, like, for everybody involved. And then, like, for the actors, like, that must either be really hard, or I guess maybe easier, because it's like how much actual acting do you have to do when you actually feel like you're drowning in sand? Because I'm like, it's getting, like, thrown up into their faces, and, like, just like that has to be very scary and very uncomfortable. Or being in a room that's filling up with water, like, that's terrifying, even if like, okay, it's controlled, but there's always that, like, okay, but yeah, like, everything in me, like, every primal instinct is, like, screaming to get out.
Yeah, no, they are challenging movies. The actors definitely went through hell. I mean, they all probably hated me by the end. Yeah, and like, and also in the script, like, you know, it'll say like, oh, so and so is doing something right here, but like sometimes we would have to figure out like what's everybody else doing in this moment. You know, the script only says like Zoe goes over here, but I have 6 people that are like, what am I doing beat to beat to beat? So that was really, that took a lot of mental bandwidth to figure out like things that made sense. And you know, and so yeah, it was yeah, you know, the train was very claustrophobic, and the bank figuring out, like, just figuring out where the grid was, and like where people, oh no, you can't step there because that laser would kill you, you know, that you know. So it was just, you know, we had strings, and then they were, you know, no, it's the lasers up here, just a little bit, bring up your eyes just a little, you know. So you know, each room had its own, and then to say nothing of, you know, giant rain towers in the New York City room, where, you know, if you get them wet, then you have to reset. Oh, you're down for 30 minutes because everybody's drenched, and we have to go back to one. And so you know, the escape room movies are there because they have scope, but they're still smaller movies in terms of like, I don't have 100 days, and you know, so they are the most logistically, I feel like I could go do a Marvel movie and it would be like no problem, because this was, you know, each room had just so many moving pieces.
Yeah. It's a lot to keep track of, and like it was
Yeah.
really beautiful. Like every room I was like, oh gosh, this is like really, like, Minos did like a stellar job of like dressing this, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'm gonna die in 10 minutes, but it's a great view. Yeah.
I mean, I would love to do the behind the scenes of Minos movie, like they picking out the swatches and the wallpapers and stuff. Like, who are these people? You know, they just like, they're so meticulous about everything, you know.
You know, they've got the top interior designers, because it's all these like super obscenely rich fuckers. So they only have like the best of the best. And he's like,
they have
if I'm going to be involved in this game,
Johnny
it's got to be gorgeous.
Johnny Ives in death rooms, and they're really bored too.
Yeah. And they're like, well, that's not like period accurate. I was going for this kind of aesthetic, and that couch would never be in that room. I need an authentic couch.
You sound like my writer Maria Melnick on the first one. She you know, no, this is too mid-century modern. No, you know. And it's like, well, you know, they're artists. They see what they do as art, you know. It's an installation, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm still curious about this bank scene. Okay, so the actors did not have actual lasers to work with. Did you set up strings, or just like a couple of strings here and there? Or like what was the process of that like?
Well, I mean, the first part of that is like the studio, because what I wanted to do is like every time they step on a wrong tile, I wanted the grid to keep turning on. But then the problem with that is it would be 1,000 effect shots in one sequence, and they were like, no. So we had to come up with a creative way to turn it on and off. And so we figured out in the writing of it to get them behind the counters, and they get booby trapped. And so there was just some creative things we had to solve for that. And yeah, each time they step on the wrong tile in the movie, the grid gets bigger. But we established 10 lasers in the first one. So now you have 10 lasers, and then the next time they make a mistake, there's 10, and then there's 10 more. And so figuring out exactly, you know, where they were in the space, and it was all mathematically correct. And the visual effects team did a LiDAR scan of the space. And so we really got into some trouble with like where people should be. We definitely took a few poetic licenses with like, oh, there was a laser there. Holland Road would have been vivisected in half at this point, but you know, maybe the audience won't remember. You know, but and where the height of the lasers, what made sense in terms of camera, and we can't get the camera that low, so let's start the grid at like a foot, you know. And so it was all mathematically figured out, and that took a lot of like us in SketchUp, and then in like our prep in our offices with a lot of strings on T-square on you know, on stands and stuff. Yeah. There was a lot of times where it'd just be me and the visual effects, you know, supervisors and my DP just looking at stuff, go, wait, oh, okay, what was this section? Okay, shit, turn around, we're backwards, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, you know,
good.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm really glad with where the lasers came, you know, early iterations. We're really trying to find the way it would look. But they look really good.
They do look really good. And I hope there's extensive behind the scenes footage of like the figuring out of the lasers, because that would be cool to see on like bonus features.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I'm sure we could figure that out. There's also there's a whole, you know, there's a whole other ending that's going to be on the extra DVD stuff that was that I think fans will enjoy. So there's a lot of goodies that will come to home video, I think.
Sweet.
But see it in the theater first.
Yeah, see it in a theater. You know what? I watched it on my couch, and I saw you like cringing, like, oh, I think you saw the version that doesn't have this and this. So I'm like, but I do want to go see it in the theater because I feel like just like gorgeous set pieces, like really cool color, and just like everything about it was really just so huge, and like the sound. So I would like to experience it in a theater. So I'll probably take my nephew to go see it because it's PG-13, so I can take him.
Awesome. Yeah, it's but thank you. We appreciate it, and it is really, the sound alone is just, it's worth seeing it in a 5.1 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I had so much fun watching this. I was a fan of the first one, so this one was like even more. It was just like an assault of just like bigger and like more intense. So I was like, oh hell yes. And then I was just like, oh fuck, this would be really cool in a theater for sure.
Awesome.
All right. Do you want to add anything else? Anything you want to share with us? No?
No, I really just appreciate the interview, and I love talking to you. And you know, you become dead inside by the end of a process like this. It's been 2 years, so to see people really digging it, and the fans, you know, we've had some test screenings, and the fans really dig it, and so it feels really good, you know. So I appreciate it, and you know, I hope people show up. You know,
we're jolting you back to life. It's alive.
Yeah, indeed.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Escape Room Tournament of Champions hits theaters July 16th. I promise you guys, you want to see this one in a theater. I'm going to go see it for a second time in the theater. It deserves to be on a big screen. All right. Thank you so much, Adam. I'm really excited for everyone to check this out. And
Namaste.